We now have the AMD Radeon RX 7800 GRE in the UK and the US. I've got one here to take a look at. I'll tell you all about it after I quickly pay some bills with this video sponsor. NZXT's new Kraken and Kraken Elite Aero cooler range uses their CAM software to customise their display. You can now add custom images and GIFs to the standard Kraken, plus if you wish add an infographic such as stats and temps of your PC. For the Kraken Elite you now have support for up to 60 FPS GIFs with a whopping 8,000 colours over the previous 256, and by some NZXT wizardry it also uses less of the CPU too. Magic. So if you have a Kraken or Kraken Elite in your PC then get updating, but if not, now there's even more reason to get your hands on one. Visit the link in the description box below to learn more. So I have the HellHound edition from Powercolor to look at today, very kindly sent out by Scan Computers UK, a UK retailer that sell a whole host of different components, pre-audio video gear. They have a whole range of pre-built systems as well, their 3XS systems, and I will link them all down below. So they kindly sent out the 7800XT previously in the HellHound edition, and I asked for the same one for this so we can easily compare as we have the same versions as well. You're not going to see too many differences in terms of the actual construction of it. It's all going to be underneath. So price wise at the moment this is $574.99. It's £60 more than the 7800XT. So I wonder if we'll see £60 extra performance or not. We shall see in the testing. But opening the box up, we have got the card itself, and that's it. We've seen from the other Powercolor cards that you generally don't get anything extra included. I will look underneath just to double check that, but nope, just an empty box. So I want to quickly touch upon the different Powercolor models because a lot of people have asked me which one to get when they look at one. There's lots of different options. Generally speaking, the Fighter series, there are no frills, no RGB, but certainly get the job done at a cheaper cost as well, generally around MSRP, so they're more of an entry-level option. You've got the HellHound, which sits in the middle, a bit more functionality. You've got a factory overclock, also a dual BIOS, so you can have a silent mode, bit of illumination and lighting on there, generally sit in the middle. And then you have the Red Devil editions, which are their highest end option, generally reserved for their higher end models, and also pushed a little bit further with the clocks as well. And there's also a little bit of a crossover as well, so you won't see the Red Devils appearing till 7800XT and up, and then the Fighters will start disappearing when you get to the 7800XT, for example. So the lower ends are more reserved for the lower end SKUs, and then the higher end obviously for the higher end models. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys that are wondering about which one to get in the lineup. So going back to these two cards, if you were to shuffle these up and put them in front of me without looking at the label to tell me which one it is, I would have a hard time telling you. As you can tell, they are very much the same design. Now performance wise, they're expected to go between the 7800XT and then the 7900XT. Now it's only when you jump up to the 7900XT, which is the next step up from the GRE, that you'll see the cooler size increase dramatically. Even on the HellHound they do have a bigger option available for the higher end cards. Now in terms of the size of this one, if you are wondering, it's a 322mm long, a 134mm high, and then a 50mm thick, so 2.5 slots thick. Let's talk about the clocks and things that we're going to see in this card. I will bring this up on the screen as well. So much like the 7800XT, we're going to be seeing 16GB of GDDR6 on this card, running at 18 gigabits per second, 5120 stream processors, and then we've got a core clock of 2113 MHz, at a boost of 2366. We do see the clocks reduced by about 60 MHz if you're going to use the silent mode, but I found these coolers to be very quiet that I didn't feel the need to actually swap that over, especially when I tested the 7800XT. So let's have a look around the actual card itself. On the front we've got our triple fans. The outside two go anti-clockwise and then the one in the middle goes clockwise, so that also helps keep dust away from the cooler as well as also increase the performance. We've got a really chunky cooler, much the same as the 7800XT, so we'll put the little illustration on the screen so you can see that in a bit more detail. See if we can see inside there. We've got a 14-layer PCB there, and then we've got a 15 phase, which is 9 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 phase of VRM design, and Dr. Moss. I said in the 7800XT, I really do like the design of these cards, very kind of industrial, and being able to see the insides is something that I really do like. A bit more of a personal preference thing, not everyone will like it, but certainly does appeal to me. We have got a nice metal backplate on this card. We have got some LED options as well. We've got a blue and then also like a crimson. I call it like the NZXT purple. And you can also turn the control off as well if you put it into the center position. We've got two 8-pin EPS connectors for our power. Minimum recommended wattage power supply for this is 750 watts. And then on the left hand side we have got our dual BIOS switch. So standard mode is overclock, which is on the left, and then silent mode you can switch over to the right. If we go to the end, we've got all of our connectors. So we've got one HDMI 2.1, then 3 DisplayPort 2.1. So up to 4 monitors, maximum resolution of 8K, so 7620 by 4320 if I remember correctly. Before I test this card, I want to quickly say I am looking to get the 4070 Super in to look at, so we can do a 1 versus 1 if that's something you'd be interested in. It seems to be the equivalent card from Team Green at this price point, so I think that will make quite an interesting video. So get subscribed and ding the bell so you don't miss that. Any other 1v1s you want to see, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. But for now, let's get this card tested and see how it performs. The test system was an Intel 12900K at stock on the Asus Z690 Hero. Got 32GB of Kingston Fury Beast DDR5 at 5600MHz. Cooling is the Corsair H170i Elite LCD. We have a FireCuda 531TB for storage, and all parts are powered by the Fantex Revolt 1000W in the Etho2 Pro case. For benchmarks, I'm now compiling a list of different cards and I'll keep adding to this over time. I've also retested the 7800XT as that's the closest price card to my GRE, plus the one I think people will be looking at anyway. Starting with CyberPunk, in 1440p the GRE is 5 frames faster than the 7800XT at 110, but just one behind the Asus TUF 4070, which is $200 more. Adding ray tracing on top, we see a little increase over the 7800XT again, but we would expect given the price difference. Bumping up to 4K, the GRE matches the TUF 4070 Ti, which is very surprising, especially as the 4070 Ti is the card you'd usually be looking at for getting into 4K gaming. Adding ray tracing it all becomes a little bit too much, with just an average of 15 FPS. In Starfield at 1440p, the GRE gets a surge of energy and goes faster than the 4070 Ti. Now Starfield is adding options such as DLSS and FSR, but even at raw performance benchmarks this is very good, and not too shabby on the 1% lows either. Moving up to 4K it remains equal to the TUF, and at this rate this is looking to be a good card for 4K. On to Apex Legends, in 1440p we have a nice bump in performance over the 7800XT. If this is a game we're looking to play, this is certainly into the competitive high refresh rate monitor territory. The 1% low is a little bit odd, but that seems to be a bit of a pattern when mixing Apex Legends with AMD cards. In 4K the GRE sits about where you'd expect it to be, but it's still hot on the heels of the 4070 Ti. Nothing to write home about in Det 5 at 1440p, but the results are getting closer to the 4070 Ti again when we move to 4K. In Shadow of the Tomb Raider there's a 10 FPS improvement over the 7800XT in 1440p, then just 6 in 4K. This is one of the results that just seem a bit meh. Can it run Crysis? It can. At 1440p it averages 161, but all the AMD cards seem to struggle with the 1% low. In their defense, this is a self-titled Nvidia the way it's meant to be played quotation marks game. Thankfully in 4K it does level out a bit, but the 1% lows are still half of the average. Last but not least, Far Cry 6, which typically favour AMD cards, and in 1440p we see the 7800XT pulling ahead for the first time, with the GRE coming bottom of the list, but to be fair there's just 3 FPS in it, those of which could just vary between runs. In 4K the GRE comes 1 frame behind the 4070 Ti and with a higher max FPS. Very good results for this card both in 1440p and 4K. Last but not least, 3D Mark. You can get the standard edition as a demo on Steam if you want to download it yourself compared to what you're currently running in your system. So I have got my notes for this part, so please bear with me, but I'm sure if you're actually considering this card then you'll want to know this information anyway. So the HellHound was the card that AMD sent out to the US YouTubers, so you may have seen some results for this already, but I can certainly tell you the card specific features. Thermal performance of this is great. We saw that with the 7800XT. It reached a maximum of 76 with a room temperature of 21.3, so that's a 54.7 delta. It was a little bit quieter than the 7800XT anyway, even though it performed a bit faster, so something just to note. The fans were at spin at under 60 degrees anyway, plus if you do they're not very noticeable, and I wouldn't see the need to go over to silent mode, they're very quiet anyway. No coil whine either on the card that I noticed. The only part I did see was during the menu of Crysis. It does it for every card, I'm not sure why, but once you get into the gaming it disappeared, so nothing to worry about there. For the lighting we have currently, as you can see, the blue. I can easily just switch this over, so if we go to the middle that's the off, and then to right is the purple. There's no RGB control for this by software or anything like that. You will have to look at another model if you want that feature, but I think the colours that are built in are quite nice. They have grown on me as well. I didn't really like it when I first saw it in the 7800XT, but now I quite like it actually, it's not too bad. So the final thing I want to cover is the dollars per frame, and I've kept this one to last because I think it's a pretty interesting one. So is it going to be worth the extra $60 from the 7800XT? And as you can tell from the graph, the 7800XT and the 7900 GRE have the same dollar per frame. So it's literally just a case of paying $60 to get $60 of performance, which I think was really neat. And that's why I wanted to leave this graph to last. I think it's also nice for the 7800XT HellHound owners to know that they're not leaving any performance on the table. There's literally no benefit to going out and selling their 7800XT to get this. You've literally got the same dollar per frame rate as this one, so a really nice thing to know, I think, as well. So overall, it is though a great card, built very well, and as you can see by the results, an absolute 1440p monster, and even getting into the 4K realm as well, which I think is obviously very nice to see at this price point. So I think that's everything that I want to say in this video. Tests and things will evolve over time. I'm still fairly new to doing the graphics card reviews and things like that, so if there's anything else you want to know, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you about it. I will leave the links for these in the description box if you want to pick one up. Big thank you, of course, to Scav for sending this out for me to look at. There will be some builds and stuff coming up with this card as well, so get subscribed and ding the bell so you don't miss those. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one.